This is a brand new release from Airfix. It's the 148th North American P51D Mustang, and it's a very welcome addition from the new line of Airfix kits. Really nice box art there, as usual. Tend to get that with most Airfix kits these days. It's always sort of grabs your attention straight off. So, looking at the kit, obviously we've got the instructions first. So running through here is what we've come to expect from Airfix these days. So it's the modern instructions with colour-coded sequences showing you where the previous steps part is placed. So, for example, putting the chair together, this piece together here is then there, and so on as you go through the build. We also now have a bit of a suggestion as to what the colours are as well, it seems. So here it's pointing out 110 for the floor, and it's a sort of wooden brownish colour, and we've got 85 here for the battery box behind the seat, and you're starting to see colours. So that's helpful, because obviously they only use Humbrol colour call-outs, so not everyone uses Humbrol, so that gives you a bit of a guide. And as we're working through here, you've got 10 steps on this first page, and that's all around the cockpit, and we've got an instrument panel going on here with a decal sheet for the instruments. So that's all very nice. And then coming together quite quickly, we're into certain parts of the fuselage now being added, and it's a bit of a strange makeup, as you'll see when we look at the kit parts, as to how this is. It's not your conventional two halves together with the cockpit inside. So we start to add certain bits here with the underside and the air scoop and parts for the tail wheel. And now you're starting to choose your options if you're going to have it in flight or with the wheel down. So you need to make that decision from that point onwards, obviously. Then we've got parts of the cockpit and fuselage interior sidewalls coming together. And here we're using a few decals for plaques and information bits, and also panels on the side of the cockpit walls. And then we've come to a fuselage half with a separate tail insert here, which would possibly lead to different variants coming down the line in 1/48 scale. So as you can see, we're down here working on the other side, and the same thing again. We've got the new Airfix locating tabs here on the tail, so that's quite good, gives you a better fit. And then here you can see where the colour-coded parts are quite useful. You can see all the parts that should be in before this stage, and then we start to put the main part of the cockpit floor into the side of the fuselage to start building up the cockpit, and then the two sides of the fuselage comes together with the top of the nose of the fuselage being put on there as well as a separate piece. Then we're on to the wings, with the interior of the wheelbase going on as a separate part here to the lower part of the wing, and that you also get the opportunity here to drill out parts if you're going to have the rocket pods or the drop tanks. Then the upper parts of the wing go onto the underside of the wing, with the lights being put in here as clear parts, and then separate inserts for the guns. Then the next step is ailerons and flaps, and you get two options where you're going to have it down or up, and there's a bit of detail here showing you how to line it up. And then we've got a few more parts going on there, and it gives you, it does that, you do actually get details of the degree here to get the correct angle. Then we bring the wing to the fuselage, which is looking like it's a bit of a snap fit in there. It's giving you an option, symbols here to make sure it slips in, so it goes in underneath the air scoop and then clips in at the front. And then we've got a piece here which inserts to finish off the underside of the fuselage. The exhausts then go in at this point, as well as the pin here to take the propeller in the nose. And a few more detailed parts here on the underside, and again more options for open or closed on the rear side of the scoop there. I don't know the terminology of the Mustang, so forgive me there. Then the horizontal tail planes coming together, as well as the flaps and ailerons on the back there, and the rudder piece, all separate and all movable and posable, which is good. Then we're running through here showing you for in-flight. There's just an insert here for the wheels to be up, or if not, then we look at the doors and we start posing all of this with the undercarriage and everything coming together, which looks very good. Lots of detail going in there, lots of parts, so that's always a good sign. Then there's the options for what the plane's carrying. So on the underside, so we've got drop tanks or the rocket pods, and different types of drop tanks there, I believe. Again, I'm not an expert. So you just check your options there on which one you're going to use. And then the propeller and the nose cone come together, and then we'll start doing the final parts here of the canopy. So there's a few plastic parts that go on the inside of the canopy here. And interestingly, the windscreen has part of the nose section of the fuselage again, which we've seen in a few other kits that they've done recently. So that means that you can get a bit of a seamless line there between the fuselage and the windscreen without having to worry about damaging the clear parts if you have to sand anything in. And that completes the build. So then we're on to the marking options, which are really quite interesting, to be honest. I'm not a Mustang expert, but I've never seen either of these options, so that might be something that Airfix have chosen here to try and set themselves apart from other 148 Mustangs, because there are one or two and there's a few on the horizon. So the first one here is the Little Indian, which is the 2nd Air Commando Group of the 10th Air Force, United States Army Air Force in Kalakunda. Excuse me if that's wrong. That's in India in 1945. Very nice natural metal finish here, with sort of lightning bolts here, which are in black, as well as black stripes all across the wings, and an olive drab anti-glare panel here in front of the cockpit. And all of these black parts here that you can see are decals, so there's not any difficult masking. If you don't want to, you can use the decals. Then on to option B. This is 4415152 Jersey Jerk. This is an aircraft flown by Captain Donald Strait, I hope that's pronounced right, from the 361st Fighter Squadron of the 356th Fighter Group of the United States Army Air Force in the Royal Air Force, Marston Heath, Suffolk, England, 1945. This is perhaps the most eye-catching of the two options, but also slightly difficult to execute as well, because although you do get quite a lot of decals here, so all of this diamond pattern and the stripes on the front here on the nose cone are decals, it's going to be a little bit difficult unless you're using the Humbrol colours, which they tend to match their decals to match this up, because in this scenario the nose cone would need to be painted blue, and also the rudder and the part for the canopy, and all of that blue should tie in with the blue on the insignia and also the blue of Jersey Jerk. So whether that will actually link up if you use Humbrol Matte 25 blue, I'm not so sure. I've done it before in the past and it has worked, where I've used insignia red for a Japanese build. So the colours are bang on if you can do it, but first off, whether the colours match, that's one thing, but secondly, the red stripes here on the nose cone are supplied as decals. Again, one, I'm not sure how easily they'd go down, and two, if you are going to paint it yourself, which would be easier to make sure the colours match, that's going to be extremely difficult to execute. So it's a very attractive scheme. You might want to think about how you're going to go about it before committing to it, because it does look like it would be in practice quite a difficult scheme to pull off. But very nice to have it included, and the decals are extremely good. We'll get to those in a second. Then, as is per the norm with Airfix, we get full stencil data, and we've got a stencil sheet there on the back of the instructions. Now, looking at the decals, you can see this is a really nice set, very large set of decals, and the two parts, this down here, so up here, this is the common stencil data and the insignias. So that's the common decals for both aircraft, with the insignia and the stencil data. Then we've got this here, this is for the Little Indian aircraft from India. And as you can see, there's all the black lightning bolts and a few keel markings there as well, and a few little details. perfectly printed, absolutely no problem there from what I can see. They are the usual finish of Airfix recently, so slightly matte, but it's never caused any problem for me personally. And then the B option here is the Jersey Jerk, and here you can see where the blue diamonds are to go across the nose, and the black parts for the wings, and these semicircles are to go around the nose cone once it's painted blue. So there you can see, you know, make up your own mind. If you're up to it, then by all means that would probably be the most striking of the two. So they're very nice. Then all the parts come in one bag with clear parts separately bagged, so we'll look at the clear parts first. We've got 3 options there for the canopy, and there's no problem here on mine. I'll just get in close. So I do have quite a large scratch down the canopy, which is part 3 of this fret, which is part 3 of this sprue. Hopefully, well, I won't worry too much. I mean, there is a difference. You've got the Dallas canopy, and there's a few different canopies here, but I'll just, you know, I won't mind. I'll switch to whichever one. If that's part of the one that I'm using, I'll just use another one. But the other two are very clear, and the windscreens are also very clear. Moving on to the first sprue, we've got the 2 sides of the fuselage halves and 2 parts to the upper part of the wing, as well as the cockpit floor, which is all in one piece here, running through to the details of the tail wheel as well. We've also got the drop tanks here as well, and the rudder. This is probably one of the better or best Airfix kits I've seen for surface detail. Very refined panel lines and very nice rivet detail there across and around the nose and on the upper part of the wing. There's not much to complain about at all. The panel lines, I wouldn't say are too deep. They're on the deeper side, but they're not as bad as some Airfix kits have been in the past. And on the parts for the cockpit, actually ejector pin marks are pretty much removed in areas where you wouldn't want them. So that's also something that Airfix tend to do. You get a lot of ejector pin marks, but not so much on this. It's a sturdier plastic as well. It feels it's quite a lot stronger. Usually it can be a little bit soft, so I'm very impressed with that. And overall, that's top quality. And then on to the second sprue. We've got the main part there for the underside of the wing, as well as the tail here as a separate piece in 2 halves, and we've got the one piece there for the top of the nose of the fuselage. There's also an alternative tail there, which I'm not sure is actually used in this kit. I didn't see an option there. We've also got parts here for the sidewall and parts there for the undercarriage doors. There's wiring detail there on these doors. That's probably some of the best detail I've seen on an Airfix kit to date. That is extremely good. Really, really, really nice. That will really pop under a wash. Then we've got parts here. These are the sides of the cockpit walls. There are a few prominent ejector pin marks there. Hopefully they would be covered. If not, you are going to have to fill these because they're going to stand out quite a lot. I would imagine that you will see some of these. So that's just something to take on board there. Again, surface detail here is absolutely top notch. I mean, we're talking on a par with the recent Edward kits like the 109 and the FW190. Really, really good. So no problem there. Then on to sprue C, and here we've got the horizontal tail planes, a pilot figure, the detail for the wheel bay, one piece prop there, and the undercarriage doors if you want to have it in flight, as well as this piece here which makes up the front part of the wing and connects it to the nose on the underside of the fuselage. The pilot figure is very basic, I would say. Very much like the older Airfix kits, a bit like what we've said on the 262. Yeah, it's not very good at all. It's not very crisp. It's a bit blurry. You do have separate arms there, but I would expect a little bit more. It's a bit soft on the details, if I'm honest. So that's that sprue. Then we're on to sprue D, and this has quite a lot of the smaller parts. So all of the parts here for the cockpit. We've got two types of tread pattern there for the wheels. So obviously there's some parts there that we're not using. Here is the back of the seat. And if we just look for the base of the seat, we've got harnesses here coming down from the on the back of the seat. There are no lap harnesses on the bottom of the seat, so bit of a 50-50 there. At least we've got some there on the back. The cockpit, the instrument panel is very nice. Good detail there. So once the decal's on top, I'm sure that will sink down and show you all of that. Raised detail very nicely, and quite a lot of small parts here that make up the detail parts of the cockpit. So that's another nice sprue. And then finally we've got the weapon sprue, which has the rocket pods here, which are not hollowed out. I assume they would need to be, and some of the mounting parts for that as well. So that's the kit. That's the 148th North American P51D Mustang from Airfix, brand new. Kit number A05131 with 2 marking options. That's a very impressive effort from Airfix.